Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on decorating with fresh greens. We are happy to have you here. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes while we go over, while we wait for everybody to get logged in to go over some notes for anyone who is new. Happy holidays. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. If this is your first time attending a webinar with us, you'll submit your questions using that Q&A box or using the chat, which I am opening up now. So send those to me and I will be monitoring throughout the class and then giving those questions to Peg when she is ready to take questions. We are recording this class, so if you have to leave early for any reason or if you want to access the class like tomorrow or next week, it'll be available probably around lunchtime tomorrow. Sometimes it's a little bit later, but it'll be available tomorrow on our YouTube channel and we'll send it out by email. I think that's about it on my end. If you guys have any issues, please feel free to send me a chat. I will do my best to assist. And that's it for me. Peg, most of you all probably know Peg by now if you attend these webinars or if you attend our classes in our stores. Peg has been at our Fair Oaks store and is one of our primary instructors and has been with us for many years. And I look forward to your greens class every year. So I'll let you go ahead and get started on all of your beautiful greens.
Okay, thank you, Sally. And welcome this afternoon to the happy thing of decorating. We just went through a lot of decorating over the weekend. The Lord has blessed me with a wonderfully large family, children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren, and they're all relatively local. And so we do have gatherings. And I would like right away to bring up a quick little picture. I would have to say we didn't do any fancy filming, but this is just one group where we literally filled the deck with people and buckets of greens, and some were doing Advent wreaths and some were doing regular wreaths, and we were having a wonderful time. So these are primarily a couple of my granddaughters, and the little one in the red is Clara, which you all have seen a number of times. She just turned 7, and she was determined to make her own wreath. And so I showed her how to bunch them and how to wire them, and she literally made her own wreath. I'm sorry that I don't have a picture of what she actually did, the finished picture, but it was fantastic. And what really fascinated me was when she finished, she turned around and told her mother, who homeschools the children, and she's in first grade, "Mother, I did this 85% myself, and Mammy did 15%. And I thought, oh my goodness, in first grade, I'm not sure I even knew what percent was. So I was heavily impressed. We had a beautiful day to do it. It was a little cool. You can see everybody has their jackets on, but it was just a nice event. And so if you can have people gather and do this, it's a wonderful thing. Okay, let's go away from that for a moment and talk about our greens. One of the first things that you have to be concerned with when you're doing arrangements and using greens, to have them, particularly if you're doing them early, which we have done, and have them last through Christmas, is to condition those greens. Here at the Garden Center, we buy in a lot of beautiful fresh greens. And the first thing that we do is recut that stem so that it's fresh and it will absorb water and be hydrated again. And we put it into warm water because that, not hot, but warm water because that helps it absorb faster. After that, cold water doesn't matter. It's the initial warm water that does it. Takes a lot of effort to do that, but it works. And that way, those greens will last through the season. if you are cutting greens from your own garden, which many of us do, at least some of them, then bring those in and immediately put them into warm or tepid water and let them soak through that and leave them in that water. It only needs to be shallow because you don't want to fill up too much water. Okay, leave them in that water until you are ready to arrange with them. I love to sit those containers on my back deck or outside my basement door and leave them until I'm ready to work with them. And while you're doing that, you're often advised if you have a fresh Christmas tree to have that cut, and so that it will absorb water too. And a product called Prolong is fantastic for helping to keep down the bacteria. So, according to the directions, add some of this to your water, and it's very helpful. Okay, really is. I want to go first, and there's a number of tips as to what I have done for all these years with arranging. But I think the next picture shows what I had just done on my deck. Okay, we'll get, yes. Okay, the deck has had a lot of beautiful summer annuals. Of course, they're gone now. And I have decorated with plants that will go through the winter. They have been beautiful in the fall, and they'll go through the winter and still be beautiful until the weather warms up. Then I wanted a lot of color and Christmas feeling on this deck. And at the moment, it looks very Christmassy. I have since added some red bows to this, but the top one is a hanging basket. And I will show you in a moment how that's made, okay? And the bottom two containers are what we typically call our outdoor arrangements of cut greens. And I will also show you how those are done. But take a good look at how these are, because they are done in wet oasis and they will go through the holidays easily. And I have had, often the berries will not go into February, and primarily the birds will probably eat them at that point in the game. But by taking away the bows and taking away the berries, those are greens arrangements, which are interesting in and of themselves because of the contrast of color and the contrast of texture, they will go often for me into February. And so they're a plus for a long period of time. Okay, we're going to come back to meeting me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that hanging basket. I did it in a decorative container, which I have had for quite some time, okay? You may not have a decorative container, but an awful lot of people will still have their hanging baskets. You've probably taken them down now if they had annuals in them, but you can use those and put fresh greens in it. That one is hanging, okay? Inside of here, I have gone into the greenhouse and gotten a plastic container that will hold water. And that is placed inside of there. And then I'm going to use the same piece that I'll show you in something else. Couple of blocks of oasis, or this large block, which I've firmly put in here and won't come out. Okay, then you place wet, thoroughly wet oasis in this container, and then you're able to push your greens firmly into this. And be firm when you push those in, because there will be wind and you don't want them to blow out. So that's how I did that particular design. Okay, how did I do the designs that were in the containers at the bottom? we stock these little plastic pots which hold water, and it's important that it holds water. And into that, I place a large block of Oasis that is thoroughly wet. It could be 2 blocks of the smaller Oasis. Okay. I like it to come up high because I want to be able to push those greens into it and have them come down. So this can be used, put into another decorative container, or into pots like mine on the back deck that I had annuals in, and they are attractive. So I took out enough of the soil to place these in so that that weight does not show, and they go through winter that way. As far as watering is concerned, most of the time I don't have to worry about it. If there is enough rain, it's going to stay moist. But you can periodically go out and add from the top. Lukewarm water is good. Cold water is fine because it's accustomed to the cold. All right. So this is how it begins. And remembering what that finished one looks like, let me bring over the evolution of that. And I haven't finished this because I wanted you to see how it was working out. Okay. This is that wet block of Oasis. And it's standing up tall so that I could reach it with the stems. Into that, the first thing that I do is pretty much set the base of it, which I want to flow out somewhat, and then pretty much set the height of it, which I have used this green giant arborvitae, which holds up really, really well. And by the way, this is one arborvitae that the deer don't generally eat, which is a great thing. Now it gets to be really big. So you've got to have a pretty big area to grow the green giant arborvitae. But it makes a wonderful cut green. And so I have pushed those greens very firmly into that oasis and all the way around. Now I want this to be the structure of this container so that I don't lose it and have a big one here and a small one here. I have set the height with a pretty piece. And then I have begun to place the American boxwood. Boxwood is a wonderful thing to work with for Christmas greens. And if you have your own boxwood, this is a great time to prune that boxwood. It's cooled down, so you're not going to get new growth from the warmth of fall. And it's good for the boxwood as well as you. I reach down into my boxwood and make a few long cuts. Only a few. I do it very judiciously. And then on the outside, I can make some shortcuts. And it lasts for a long period of time. And then I can't get along without Velcro pruners. They're the best. Yes, they are expensive, but they last a lifetime and they can be sharpened. And so I go in and I make my cut. This is conditioned greens. Making that fresh cut is a good thing. And I'm going to repeat some of this here, okay? And I'm going to really push that in firmly. Now, when I'm working with this oasis, and I'll show you again with the centerpiece arrangement, I always brace myself. I brace against this so that I can push that firmly in. And then I will repeat some of that boxwood. You can also then, and I love this beautiful, beautiful cypress. It's sapphire, Carolina sapphire. I will remove the bottom pieces of this because I don't want it to tear up this oasis. Make up your mind where you're going to put this because you don't want to take it in and out. You'll destroy your oasis, and you don't want to do that. All right, let's add firmly. Now, here again, I'm bracing it so that I can push very firmly and pushing that into place. And then I will repeat as necessary. And don't dismiss when you get this, you're going to have a lot of short pieces, but they really come in handy. This is how you can, without overdoing it, you can come in and put a few of these short pieces in as filler. Okay, so don't throw away your little pieces. They can be used as filler, but I will continue to fill in this arrangement. Now, hopefully that one you enjoyed, okay, and understood what I was doing with that. And hopefully, I'm going to set this on the floor. Sorry about that, but it takes a few minutes to settle it in. Okay, I think that we can come up with the next one, Danny. Okay. Okay, here is another thing that you can do. I love the blues, the Wedgwood blues, and so forth. And this is actually the bay window that is over my kitchen sink. And I display a lot of those blue and white pieces there. And so while I was at work one day, my daughter went out and harvested greens and came back in and simply tucked most of those greens into the water of these containers. And then, because this was before the cool weather the last couple of days, the camellias this year have been beyond beautiful. And this one, I think, is winter snow. And it was indeed looked like snow for sure. And so she used the white as a wonderful pickup for the beauty of the combination of the different types of greens. It was beautiful even without the white, but the white really tied it all together. Now, frost has certainly bitten those camellias. So after this, I'm going to tuck in the little tiny bunch carnations to pick up that white, and they will go for a long period of time. Okay, let's talk about maintenance for our arrangements and us inside particularly. Because these have been done Thanksgiving weekend and they're going to go for a full month, and the greens are capable of that if they're taken care of. This water was clean. It had Prolon put in it to help keep down the bacteria. But every now and then, probably once a week, I will take each of those containers down. Luckily, they're just above the kitchen sink. Makes it easy. I will completely empty out that water and put in fresh water that again has more Prolon in it. I will drain it off before I put those things back into place. What you want to take care of them, you want to add water to this stuff through the season to keep it fresh, but you do not want to ruin your furniture. So let's come back to me, Danny. One thing that I do to help protect my furniture, these cork boards, which are sold in our greenhouse, are fantastic because the water doesn't soak into and through them. And they come in different sizes. And so for those containers that are actually sitting on the wood, they have small to whatever size is needed of these cork containers placed underneath them. And when I showed you pictures of the arrangements that I've done, and the ones that I'm showing you primarily on my dining table, which I don't want to ruin, beneath the claws or the runners, whichever I'm using, I will place enough of these to keep that container from ever touching that wood. And when you take your container, take it to the sink and add more water. Now you can't do that with an arrangement, a centerpiece like the one I'll show you, because you can't pour it out. You're dealing with oasis. So you want to put it there and simply add fresh water. It doesn't have to be warm, it can be any kind because it's accustomed now to what's environment with some of the prolong in it. But let that drain off so that no water will drip on your table. That's what I do consistently because I do not want to ruin my furniture. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is from the past, and it's a runner on that same table that I was just talking about. And these containers hold water, but they are not sitting directly on that table. They have those cork boards underneath them. And I'm just showing you this to show you how you can use Oasis in containers and use different plant material. Those are simply blocks of the smaller blocks of Oasis placed in those containers, and then the box would cut and pushed into that Oasis. So let's come back to me for a minute, Jamie, and give you an idea of how I do that. Okay, when I talked about small blocks of Oasis, I love to do these, and I do them, and we do them for customers. This is just a little plastic dish, which is very easy, okay, but it can be done in any of your containers. I want to do a traditional arrangement for a dining table, one in which people are seated at that table and you never really want to have anything that will interfere with eye contact across the table. So you want to remember to keep it low. I've often said never taller than your elbow to here, but that depends upon who you're measuring, okay? And so certainly I don't want it that tall. I want it a little lower, okay? So first you start with a block of really moist Oasis. And then as a progression, okay, I have used, and I'm very fond of blue, okay? And so I have used a lot of the noble fir. And I want to set the length of this. Mine is a long table, and so it can use something that's long. And so I cut this. Let's see if I can get it out. And I always trim this so that I'm not tearing up my Oasis. And I push that in place to set the length of this. And if I measure those two pieces and they're the same length, it's going to be balanced. Okay, this one is a supplement to that. Push it firmly. All right, you've set your length and they're the same length. Then you set your width, and you don't want that so wide that it's going to go into the placement area of the person across the table. And so you keep it more narrow. And then those are pushed into place to set the width. The next thing I do is set the height. And I've used two full pieces to push those into place and set the height. Then I use a few small pieces as a little bit of filler so that this will be most of the noble fur. Okay, the next step in this is right in front of me. And again, because I love it, I have the sapphire, Carolina sapphire. And it picks up a little of the color of the blue of the noble fur. There is enough green in that noble that there's a color contrast, which is good. And so then again, somewhat measuring it. I mean, you don't have to measure every piece, but it's okay. If you then you won't have a really long piece and a really short piece. So then I put in a couple of pieces of the sapphire. And then I go in and complement this way and go to the center with another one. And how did I cut this? Like so, okay? Little pieces. And I took the ends off so that it doesn't mess up. And I'm putting them right back into the holes that I created there, okay? Pushing again quite firmly, but all those little ends have been cut. Okay, so here you have now 2 stages of that. We can add boxwood. And again, picking up those wonderful clippers. And I want to take away, again, some of the foliage and then carefully go in and push that into place. Let's see what happens if we use some of this even in the center. We want enough repetition here that we have a comfortable feel to this. Okay, let's push firmly into place. Now still I am within the viewing thing of the person across from me. We can go in and cut and place those firmly in. Okay, and you can see that I'm sort of bracing and hanging on to that arrangement and filling with that boxwood until you feel satisfied with that, okay? Now, once you have finished, and I'm not going to try to do that because I want to cover more territory today, I'll put more of the boxwood in. If you choose, you've got a touch of yellow if you want to, but I'm not going to use that today. How would you decorate then? You can do bows, and this bow has been made with a fine tape wire. When you're using wire, the 26 or 28 gauge is what I use to make the bows and put it onto, we sell these picks and oh, they're so useful. They have little wires on them and you can cut them as needed. And so it makes it so easy to go in and place those bows into place. So you can do pretty bows. You can do one on the other side if you choose. Or you can also do pine cones, okay? Or beautiful balls. Okay, I have wired these. Now, we're talking about wires. We use 28 gauge, 26, maybe, taped to make the bows. But you have to have a wire that stands up when you are using things like cones. And the things that I absolutely have on hand always are my Velcros. I always keep a wire cutter. Don't cut, well, actually you can cut wire because there's a niche way, way down here, but never here. You'll ruin them. Okay, but I use the separate ones and I cut that wire for the length that I need to go into this arrangement. So you can do any kind of pine cones in there. And I have done that. Let's see if I have a heavy wire. I do here. This is how I wire them. A bit of the wire protruding and then twisting firmly around that and twisting it off. Now, this is 18 gauge wire, and you see it stands up tall. So difference in the size of the wire is very important. 18 gauge. And I'm going to cut that again and put that into place. Grouping, perhaps, and doing several. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go any further with that one. Let's see what's coming up next, because I didn't print these out. I don't remember exactly what's coming up next, Denny. But it'll all be fine. Okay, we did a centerpiece. Perhaps you have an entry, maybe even a front porch, a charcuterie board, a sideboard where you need something different. And I did this in a little basket with an insert of glass. And there's magnolia here. I've even used some of the dried grasses, which I believe I sprayed those gold. And I used some branches, which I sprayed gold. And we have beautiful, the red stem dogwood branches that I use a lot. And I have used pine cones because I wanted it to be very natural. So let's come back to me again, Danny. And I did, and it's difficult to show these big things in this close environment, but I'm going to try. Okay, there was in the greenhouse a beautiful, beautiful container which holds water. And so this has water in it. And the first thing that I put in was the beautiful arborvitae. I've used pretty much the same materials, but I've added the holly, the holly berries. And if you go out and harvest the native holly or any of that type of thing, hybrid even of the native cultivars, they don't always last for a full month, so you may have to replace them. But we do have the winterberry holly to sell here, which does hold up beautifully and can be used. And then just a branch of magnolia. But how did I create this arrangement? Because it's a little difficult. You can arrange it in your hand almost and put it into the container, but you want to control where those branches are. And I brought this little glass vase, which is the insert into some things if it's a basket or something that doesn't hold water. That one doesn't need an insert because it holds water. We have what is called waterproof tape. And I always put a little blip back so that I know where it begins and ends. And then I pick up my Joyce Chin scissors, which I have had all these years. I have to have my Velcros. I have to have my Joyce Chins. I have my wire cutters. And with those, I'm going to cut off that little end that I turned back so that I knew where it started. And you don't want to overdo this because it'll be difficult to get your stems in. But this helps to regulate and hold those stems into place. And so it's going to hang in there. Now, if you are using an antique piece, something that particularly is gold or silver lined or antique in general, I don't recommend this. I don't want you to pull off any of that or ruin your piece. But I'm not going to ruin this piece, and I wouldn't ruin a lot of just common stuff, okay? But I'm not telling you to do this on the antique piece. Okay, I've got 3 that I put across here. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to put to the other direction. This is a wonderful way when you don't need to use Oasis. Okay. There's not everybody wants to use Oasis. All right, I'm going to show you what that looks like. You can see that. It's a cross piece. And what does that do? Now you can put that piece down into place so that it's in the water and it will pretty much stay in place. You may have to brace it a little bit with a couple of others before you get it just right, but that is how that particular one is done. Okay, let's progress with the next one, Danny. Okay, a lot of people like to decorate their mantles. And particularly if you actually use a fireplace, I know because I keep not my fireplace so much as I do a Vermont casting stove. You've got heat in general in your homes. So if greens are not in water, they will dry out pretty quickly. And you'll either have to replace them or in some instances, they could be a fire hazard around the fireplace, particularly if you're burning it a lot. On this particular one, which I did several years ago, I used that same little green container with the wet oasis in it. And this is a large mantle, and so I used 3 of them, and all of those greens are in wet oasis. Now, you will have to add water to those over a period of time. And it is a mixture of greens, and you can see that on the one side, the fall away from the mantle has a longer piece of greens, but it is in the oasis. And I've also used the winterberry holly. And this is a native here. This is a cultivar, which we buy in from a wonderful, wonderful family operation in Maryland. And he established all of this cutting stuff for his sons many years ago. Now the sons are running it, but he established it, which I always thought was so interesting, as a way to put them through college. And so the money made from selling this holly berries was the way he put 3 boys through college. Now those 3 boys are living that coming. At the base of this, to complement it, are other arrangements that we made that were for sale. Okay. But again, a large arrangement which is in water. Okay, Danny, let's go to the next one. Okay, the how-to of an arrangement that I did actually last year on my table. I had a beautiful wooden tray. And even underneath that tray, you can just see the tiny little rim of the larger cork boards that are protecting that table. And on that, because I wanted a really large arrangement, I could take the center part off because it's taller for people to talk across. I could remove that when we had our big sit down. Christmas Eve is our big sit down together. I have it in a raised container. You can do that by placing your container on a cake plate. And then to either side with a smaller little designer bowl and half a block of wet oasis, I placed inside. Now, some people like to have their candles taped onto their oasis. within the arrangement. I don't like that. I do it a lot for people, but I don't like to do that because when you're entertaining, it's very easy to forget that those candles are burning. And even though the fresh greens are not flammable, so to speak, I don't want those candles burning down into those fresh greens. So you either replace them so that that won't happen, or you only burn those candles when you're sitting down at the table, or you just don't put them in the arrangement. And I have a lot of beautiful candlesticks, and so they are in candlesticks separately containers. Now, Danny, let's go to the next picture. A progression. You can see how I have progressed with this. I have begun to formulate this design. And so I have the longer pieces flowing out almost down into that container. And then I set the height. Granted, as this is right now, it is taller than a sit down thing. And let's go to the next one. Okay, progressed, more or less finished, not really. I did other things to it after this, but I added other greens. I added pine cones that were wired and put into place. I put some additional pine cones into the fabric that's there. And I added some ornamental balls that I have that is a color pickup. Okay, Danny, and the next one, please. A little bit closer view of that so that you can see what's going on. And the next one, Danny. That was the end? Okay, that was the end. Okay, let's see. Now, Advent wreaths are very popular right now. And of course, Sunday was the first of Advent. And you want to keep those candles low so that when these candles burn down, they don't burn into the foliage. And then it has the little ribbon, which is made, and I need to put it onto one of these, and that's easy enough to do. You just twist it around, and the ribbon will stay in place better this way. And I'm going to cut this because it doesn't need to be that long. I'm not cutting the wire with this, mind you. Where's my little cutter? That little fine wire is sticking there, yes. Okay. And then that is pushed into that wet oasis. Okay. Like so. Now, let me show you another use of that oasis that I enjoy. Okay, here we go. I know I'm up and down a bit, so I apologize for that. I have to reach for this stuff. Okay, that's done in what we call an oven. And I put this inside a tray that I go into the greenhouse and get. That one's in a tray. Fairly wet, but this one has candle holders taped into it with that waterproof tape, just like this. That's how we do the Advent wreaths. But there's something else that I enjoy using this for. And you can do a small one, or you can do the next size up. And I really love this. And I'm able to pick this up because it's in a large saucer, again, from the greenhouse. This is the large ring, wet and in a container, a saucer. You know, poinsettias are beautiful, and I walked through the greenhouse this morning to select one, and I don't think I've ever seen more beautiful poinsettias than we have in there. They're just wonderful. And of course, they all say Christmas very firmly. But as time goes by, even though you take care of them, you don't want to sit them in water, okay? You want to moisten them, take them to your kitchen sink, wet them thoroughly, let them drain off, put it back where it belongs, and don't water it again until you feel it and say, that's getting a little dry. By no means, if you're gifted one or take one home with foil on it, take the foil off or put hose in the bottom because that foil will hold soil. All right, hold water. This container is going to keep that ring wet, but you don't want this to sit down in there. So I turn a saucer upside down in there to elevate it above the water because over a period of time, regardless of how well you take care of these, if you want them to last for a long period of time, they're going to lose some leaves because they're not accustomed to the heat of our homes. And I found that a way to keep them attractive through that is to remove those leaves as they look bad and to sit that again on a saucer that helps it rise above the water that you're going to keep in here. Okay. And as you lose those leaves, because the Advent wreath is tidy and small, these are placed in much, much taller. Okay, see how tall that is? It comes up and it's going to hide that foliage so that it's attractive through the season. Then you can decorate it in any fashion you choose. I've tucked a bow in there and I've tucked in some pine cones. And so I really, really enjoy my poinsettias far more when I decided to hide their aging legs. All righty, Miss Sally. I think we'll take some questions.
All right, thank you so much, Peg. Everybody, please feel free to send your questions in. We'll go for about the next 13, 14 minutes. All right, first question for you, Peg. When you put the oasis in the plastic containers, how do you secure the oasis? Do you use tape or does it just sit in there?
The oasis is very heavy, and
Okay.
if you keep it moist, I haven't I don't have a problem with it at all. If you chose to do so before you begin your arrangement with that waterproof tape, you can go all around it and tape it in a couple of places. No more than that, because I don't want to restrict where I'm placing my stems. So you can tape it or not. And I usually don't.
Okay. Next question, and I actually we had a couple of questions about this. So quickly, can you discuss if you come to the store, can you buy all of these greens individually in the Oasis and all of that stuff? How does that work?
Absolutely. Yes, you can. And the beauty of it is, and I will repeat this because it's a little unique. When those greens come in, and we do have to buy in a lot of our greens, those stems are fresh cut and put into water so that they rehydrate and they will last longer. If you don't do that, and it is a lot of work, if you don't do that, these greens will not hold up as well. If you go in and things look a little bit dry to you, and it never hurts even, if you have a long branch, for instance, this branch, okay, this was fresh cut, the stem, and put into water. When you go home, if it's out of water for a while, you can make some other cuts. For instance, if you know you're doing um, a table arrangement, you can make a cut in here and immediately put it into water. And you can cut these and immediately put it into water. Now, I'm not a big advocate of having foliage down under the water. That helps the bacteria build up. So wherever possible, avoid that. Sometimes you can't, okay? And especially when you're preconditioning, you can see the bottom part of this is wet. And there's not much you can do about that, okay?
Perfect. Thank you. That leads into our next question. Where do you get your berries from in these arrangements that you are showing? Is it from your yard? Is it from the store? Is it a mix?
Well, the holly berries that I showed you in the first one, the native holly, is from the garden, okay? And we don't have a lot of that for sale. What we do have for sale here, and a lot of it, is the winterberry holly. And that's this. And it can be cut into different things. They use this in some of the wreath making process. And if you haven't been in here for a long time, it's fun to come in and watch the various ones working. It's also fun to watch them making the wreaths because they're doing that on a very simple machine that clasps it, okay? But it's fun to watch. And they're using these berries. This is winterberry holly, Ilex verticillata. And there is a native variety of this that grows beautifully in this area, even like soil that's slightly moist. There's also hybrids, which this is a hybrid, and I don't even know which hybrid it is, okay? But yes, we do have the winterberry holly for sale.
Perfect. Okay. Next question. I love the cork idea, but wouldn't water soak through the cork and then be wet against the table?
I have never had it soak through the cork.
Okay,
There
good.
is a piece of masonite on the bottom of this.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so there's like a something on the
Yeah,
bottom of
it's
it. It's
it's
lime.
dual. It's got cork and then the masonite.
Okay.
I've had these for years and years, and you do not want to ruin your furniture.
No, no, you don't. Um, do you recommend using prolong for arrangements and not just for Christmas trees?
Oh, well, this is what I've said. It's easy, and there's other things you can use, and various people use things that I don't. I use the prolong. I keep it handy, keep it out of the kitchen sink actually, so that when I'm doing these arrangements, I add it to the water always, and it helps with the bacteria. Prolong.
Okay. What pattern do you recommend making with the transparent tape? It looked like you had done kind of a tic-tac-toe, like a grid pattern. Is that what you
Well,
usually use?
yes, you do your pattern according to what you're trying to do, okay? You
Okay.
can make it a little heavier toward the back if you're doing heavy designs. But if you do too much of it, it's very difficult to get that down in. Now, I have used and sometimes do, but it's trickier, chicken wire that you force into the container or tape into the container. And in lieu of the oasis. But that is not as easy to do, really. You've got to really know what you're doing when you're working with that because you've got to concentrate on the ease of getting those stems down into the water.
Okay.
I don't
Um,
want to make this sound complicated.
no.
If anything else, just grab a bunch and put it in the water. Okay?
Uh, I love all these. I love it's so creative. Everybody can do things a little differently, and it still comes out. Um, let's see. Okay, how do you moisten the oasis before using in the sink? Is that how you do it, or do you
Okay.
let them sit in
Okay,
water?
you be very sure that when you have washed your turkey and gotten it all prepared and put it in the oven, number one, you want to be able to clean that sink really well. So clean it really well and put in, I usually use lukewarm water. You don't have to once it's been conditioned. But then I put my Oasis into there. I try to just cover it, okay? and I let it sit for at least 20 or 25 minutes before I start to work with it because I want to be sure that that block of oasis is thoroughly soaked. Okay.
Okay.
I put
Um,
furlong in
whew.
that water too before I put the oasis in.
We have a lot of questions coming in about our stock. We have, okay, we carry the Oasis and the plastic containers and the cork, right? We carry all of those in store.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah, I'm telling people yes, and I'm like, I'm making sure they,
absolutely do.
like, I'm
I
pretty sure we
trust.
sell everything you could need to make all the stuff Peg has, we sell.
Absolutely. And we sell the Felco pruners too.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we had some questions
And
about,
they are expensive.
yes, that's one
They
of our
are
most
well
requested things people
worth
ask about.
every penny. And James,
Um,
because I use mine all the time, James downstairs sharpened them for me before I came up.
Yeah, no, we had to put, I think it was a couple of years ago, we had to put together a recommended, like a Peg's Christmas wish list of like your tools because so many people asked us about the tools you use.
Christmas
Um,
wish list box gloves.
yes.
Love them, love them, love them. Okay. And a
Okay,
great,
next question. What do you think about using chicken wire instead of an oasis for an outdoor arrangement?
I just mentioned that. Okay. You can certainly do that.
Okay.
Just be sure that you've secured that chicken wire, and it's not as easy to do that as it is the Oasis. Working with dry surfaces, you could help reinforce it with your waterproof tape, but you would need to be sure that that chicken wire actually went down into that container somewhat, and then you certainly will have to see where those openings are in order to get those pieces down into the oasis. You absolutely can use chicken wire. I have done it many times. I go with the ease of the oasis, but not everybody likes to use oasis. Okay.
Okay.
I respect that.
We have a couple of questions about wreaths.
Yes.
Um, what base is best to use to create a wreath with live greens? Do you recommend the wire ones or something
I
else?
love the wire ones.
Okay.
They're the easiest to use. And then in my bag down here on the floor, which I have all my stuff in, is wire. Now, we were talking about the gauges of wire, that bows are made preferably with 28 gauge wire that's been taped with Norris tape. Not an absolute necessity, but if you tape it, it doesn't slip and slide, and it's easier to make a bow. 28 gauge, sometimes 26. That one's a little heavy for me, but I like the 28. The ones that I wired the pine cone with is 18 gauge. And usually, this wire that you wrap a wreath with is 22 or 24 gauge. So it's in between those. And what you do, and I didn't bring that up because I didn't think I'd have time. I am doing an in-house class Saturday at 10 here at Fair Oaks, and I will show how to make a wreath then, because then I can go over the 1 hour. Okay, so you attach that wire to that form, and it is a wire form, and you wrap it thoroughly, and then you bunch your bunches and wrap them as necessary to cover it properly. Some people wire each individual bunch. I never do that. I would go crazy before I finish that. I put it on there, hold it, and wrap. Do this and wrap. And the very first picture that I showed you with little Clara, who just turned 7, immediately picked up on how to do that and then said, I did this 85% myself.
I love all of her gardening. All right, this is our last question, Peg. I need to spray wilt proof on my Christmas wreath. Do you have any advice on applying it to the wreath and soft touch hollies? What's temperature and how long does it take to dry so I can decorate my wreath?
Well, we dip our wreaths that we make here. All of them are dipped and left to drain off before you buy them. If you are making your own at home, outside we have the spray bottles of wilt-proof that you can spray it with and let it dry off a bit before you put it on your door or wherever you're placing it. Okay. If you're mixing it and you buy a mix because you need a lot of it, the directions will be on the bottom.
Okay. All right. Well, Peg,
So,
that's our last question.
my favorite things, box gloves and a cheap pair when you're working with wet things. Love it. Okay. My favorite things, Velcro printers. Okay. Joystick scissors, a little wire cutter, and I have to laugh because I've got to show you this. It's quite the mess, but it is organized. A bag that I've had for years.
Oh, I need one of
It's
those.
got all my goodies, including a knife to cut the oasis. How about that?
Perfect. Yeah, I need one of those myself. All
Merry
right, Peg. Well,
Christmas.
thank you so much. Do you want to wrap up with anything before we close for the day?
Just enjoy what you're doing. The greens are so fragrant, and working with them is such a fun thing. And if you can do it in a group, that is fantastic. And if you're free, I'm going to be going over some of these same things again, but adding others on Saturday at 10 o'clock here at Barrett's location. And I'd love to meet you, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thank you so much, Peg. I'll talk to you later. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.